All right. And we are live here in my Christa Quilts Facebook group. I'm going to give a minute for everything to work. We're getting all the technology set up. Hello, hello. I'm Christa Watson from Christa Quilts. And this week I am trying something a little bit different, kind of easier. I am broadcasting to you from live inside of Facebook. Originally, I used a streaming service to broadcast live, but now we're going to actually do it inside. So I do see that people are starting to jump on. So jump on, say hi, say where you're from. I know there's a whole lot of people that recently joined the Facebook group. If you can just leave a comment, let me know you can see me, let me know you can hear me, say where you're from, that kind of thing. That will be really helpful so that I know the technology is working. I have been working this week to play around with more video. I bought a new lighting kit. I don't know if you guys can really tell because you can't see it. I'm sitting in front of some lights, so hopefully the lighting is good. Hopefully you guys can hear the audio. Hey, Brenda, how are you doing? The nicest thing about me broadcasting from live here on Facebook is I can see your comments with names. So we will get into the meat of our topic in just a moment. It is Tuesday, November 30th, 2021, and we are going to be talking about the upcoming quilt along, which is the quilt behind me called Blooming Wallflowers. So good. Brenda's here. Sandy's here. Yay, Michelle made it after all. She was worried she wouldn't make it because of a meeting. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. And hey, Nancy from Indiana. These lives are going to be maybe about 30 to 45 minutes, not a whole long chat. Here in my Christa Quilts Facebook group, I will replay it later in the group so you can catch that. So you may be watching later and not live. I will also be posting them to YouTube, and then I will put up a blog post about it. So those of you that are not in the Facebook group, I try to make it accessible to everyone. So good. Okay, it looks like all the technology is working, so we can get started. Yay, welcome, welcome. So every week in my Facebook Live, I like it to be an informal chat. I have a topic. We are going to talk about the quilt along behind me. But during the chat, if you guys have any questions at all about quilting, what the weather's like, anything, it doesn't have to be related, go ahead and type that into the chat and I will respond to you as I go through the presentation. So anything at all, you guys are welcome to chat me up. So we are going to be talking about this Blooming Wallflowers that's coming up in January. And oh my goodness, I have been cutting like crazy. I have been testing out die cutting. I have been tweaking things. This is actually from a pattern that came out a year or two ago from a previous quilt collection. So Blooming Wallflowers right here, the one behind me, was made from my Abstract Garden quilt collection. And I actually did do a quilt along back then, but I wanted to redo it showing die cutting. I'm going to show regular cutting and die cutting, but I really wanted to focus on die cutting this time around. So this is the original Blooming Wallflowers. This is the pattern. I know a lot of you guys have it. If not, you can grab it. I will put links to everything I talk about later. I'll go back and edit it, and I will add links into this. If you're watching the replay, the links will already be there. So the pattern is Blooming Wallflowers, and I am going to be remaking it using my black, white, and bright fabric. Now, the main difference is that the one behind me is a little bit more coordinated. You can't see the whole quilt. There's 12 different colors, and then the background fabric, they pop against that light blue fabric, and then the fabric in the background. This one's a little bit more scrappy in that each block is a different fabric. Well, that's not entirely true. Each of the colored saturated prints I'm using twice. So like there's the red, and then there's the red stripe, and there's the yellow, and there's the yellow. So the math works out. So each of the main fabrics is going to be featured twice. But notice in the background, the offset blocks, those are all a different fabric. And so that way it can be made scrappy. It's going to be made from a mix of fat quarters and fat eighths. Kits will be available. So again, once I'm done, I'll have links for the kits, and you can use your own fabrics, of course, but I really wanted to show what it would look like with a scrappy version and the black, white, and bright. So let's see, Denise, hi, Brenda, everybody's here, Sandy. Okay, good, I got everybody. Just want to make sure I said hi to everybody. So anyway, yes, kits will be available for this version. Now, in the pattern itself, you can make 3 sizes. I don't know if you can see this. You can make the crib size, you can make the throw size, or you can make the queen size. And you can do whatever size you want. The instructions that I'm going to go over, I'm going to show you how to make the throw size, which is the one behind me. And the difference between the different sizes, the design is the same, the block sizes just change. And I don't mind telling you a little bit about the block sizes. Could you figure out on your own without the pattern? Probably, but I know you guys like to support me and you'll get the pattern, and if you want, you can get the kit. But I like to give you as much information as I can. So for this throw size quilt right here, the block sizes, or the unit, is based on a 6-inch finished unit. For a smaller size quilt, it's going to be based on a 4-inch finished unit. And for a larger size quilt, it's going to be based on a 9-inch finished unit. So there's two ways that I like to design quilts when I'm trying to make them larger or smaller. The first way is I will just do more blocks. So you could absolutely do this size block and just do more of them yourself and figure out the math. That's one way, and that's kind of the traditional way to do it, is you make, 12 blocks or 24 blocks or 36 blocks, and you just keep making blocks. Well, the modern way to do it, and what I like to do to change things up, I've done on several quilts, is the design is the same, because you like this exact design. The only thing that changes is the individual block size. And in the larger size, in the queen size, there's also an option to put an extra border around to make it bigger. So that's two ways. If you're not sure how to make a quilt bigger, number one, you make more blocks. Number two, you make the block units bigger. And number three, of course, you can add extra borders. So I'm glad you guys are looking forward to the sew log. So that's kind of in a gist, the design. And again, I'm going to be excited to make it from black, white, and bright. So now, a couple issues cropped up when I was putting this together. So first of all, well, not really issues, but more like, hey, how can I tweak this and make it different? So the first thing, like I said, is this is a little bit more scrappy. So the requirements, the yardage requirements, is a little bit different. For the kits I'm going to offer are going to be just to make this size. So if you use the same background, or the same, not background, maybe light fabric, that light blue back there, you need a little bit less. But if you make it scrappy, you need a little bit more. And I know, Michelle, you're going to go crazy for this because she loves scrappy. You could even go a step further and you could make the background scrappy. I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to talk about it, but you could. Here's a tip in general when I try to do things scrappy. I try to do coordinated scrappy. So take a look at this, and even though it's a little scrappier, notice that the saturated prints are the main blocks, and then every other one, let me turn this so you can see this, it's got like a light, and then a black and white, and a light, and then a black and white, and a light, and black and white. So the lighter ones, those are called the low volume prints, and then the black and white are the offset. So in between those scrappy backgrounds, or the scrappy midtones, they still have a uniformity to them. It goes low volume, black and white, low volume, black and white. So in general, that's a good way to kind of change up your quilts, is come up with like a theme, or a, kind of some parameters. Another way to do it, let's say you wanted to go crazy and you wanted to make your background all be scrappy, you'd want it to be the same color. So you could do like navy blues and just have it all be navy blues. You could do like the black, this is kind of the rainbow print here, have it all be black. So you don't have to have the same exact fabric. You can change up the colors. So anyway, that's just kind of a tip. So in the pattern, what I'm currently putting together, and I will give to everybody from this point forward, is I'm going to include some enhanced pattern notes. I kind of talked about that with another pattern that I'm working on with my bling quilt, but I'm doing the same thing with blooming wallflowers. All it is just a one-page insert that talks about how you would pick the fabrics, or the fabrics that you need for the scrappy version versus having the offset blocks all be the same color. And if I believe, let's see, somewhere around here I have my notes. I believe it's basically fat quarters. Here, I'll show you the rough draft. This is not what it looks like. This is like the rough draft, but the one you're gonna get is really pretty. Basically, it's 6 fat quarters for the saturated prints, and then 12 fat eighths for the behind. So in other words, think about it this way. There's 12 blocks. So each block, you can get basically 2 blocks out of a fat quarter. So that's why, back to this picture. Let me go back to this picture. The thing about being live is I'm kind of all over the place. So basically, if you think about like that red fabric and that red fabric, one fat quarter will create 2 of those blocks. So that's why there's 12 saturated blocks, and you need 6 fat quarters, because you'll get 2 blocks out of each. And the backgrounds, because there's 12 different fabrics in the background, you only need a fat eighth. Could you do fat quarters? Absolutely. You could do 6 light fat quarters or black and white fat quarters, and you'd get 2 blocks each. Does that make sense? For anybody that doesn't know, just in case, a fat quarter measures 18 by 22 inches. And a fat eighth measures 9 by 22. So when I have the kits for you, it will have the 12 fat quarters of the saturated prints, the 6 fat eighths of the black and white prints, and the 6 low volumes, plus the background fabric that includes the binding. Now, one difference, I'm going to talk about die cutting in a minute, between the kit if you die cut it versus the kit if you use just regular traditional cutting. You need a tiny bit more of the background fabric. For this size, it normally takes 4 yards to cut it out the traditional way of either the navy blue back there or the black fabric here. But it's going to take 4 1/4 yards with die cutting, and I'll get more into that. So in the kit, I'm going to go ahead and throw in that extra 1/4 yard for you so that you can cut it out either way. You can either use die cutting or you can use traditional cutting. So anyway, I don't mean for this to be a big commercial. I'm just trying to kind of give you guys the gist of what I'm thinking about when I'm designing and when I'm remaking the quilt. So for those that just kind of came in, Blooming Wallflowers Quilt Along is going to start January 3rd. We're going to go over a little bit of the fabric requirements today, which I just did. I'm going to talk about traditional cutting versus AccuQuilt die cutting, and you can use either method. That's totally fine. No matter which method you do, you definitely want to make sure you get a copy of the Blooming Wallflowers pattern, and then I'm going to throw in the little pattern notes. I'm going to just print them off as I need to, throw those in for you guys so that you can have a little bit more information. Some of the die cutting conversion is going to all be in that little enhanced pattern notes if you need it. So that's kind of the basic idea. Just checking to see if you guys have any questions. Oh, Michelle's going to do the same background. Yeah, you could do the background scrappy, but this is kind of my scrappy like color theory. Take all the fabrics you want, throw them in the quilt however you want, and then unify them with a very, very light fabric or a very, very dark fabric. So, oh good, Lisa, she's here. Her internet was out, but now she's good to go. Oh, thanks Jane for the nice comments. I love to teach you guys, so I want to help. So again, to recap, get the pattern. You can make it in 3 sizes. I'm going to show it in the size behind me, but you guys can follow along. Now, let me talk about the tools and supplies that you guys need. Oh, where will the pattern notes be available as I already purchased the pattern? Okay, I'm keeping track. I know. Send me an email, Christa@ChristaQuilts.com. I'm going to type that in the comments right now, Christa@ChristaQuilts.com. If I can spell my name correctly. Send me an email and just say, please send me the enhanced pattern notes for Blooming Wallflowers. It's just like a PDF, and it's just 1 sheet of paper. It's just very simple. Like I said, this is my rough draft of it with like notes and stuff. And then I gave it to my graphic designer, and she's making it all pretty. So it'll just be a one page handout. If you need that, if you already have Blooming Wallflowers, send me an email, and then I will email everybody that 1-page PDF. Going forward, I will print off a copy and just tuck it inside here, and I will add it to the PDF version in my Etsy shop once it's finalized and printed. But for now, send me an email and I'll give you the enhanced pattern notes. Kind of going off on a tangent here. Whenever I make my quilt patterns, I like to remake them in new fabric, and then sometimes I come up with ideas like scrappy, or maybe I'll make it bigger. And when that happens, I don't want you to have to go buy a brand new pattern if you already have it. I'm just going to start making these enhanced pattern notes, and then that way, if people are buying it new, they'll already have it to begin with. That's a lot easier for me to do that than like do a whole new print run of the pattern, and you can figure it out as you go. So that's kind of the gist of that. Okay, now let's talk about the stuff and the supplies that you need for that. And then yes, Michelle, I will email that have the pattern, but you have to send me an email. I don't have a master list of everybody who bought it. Just send me an email. Like Michelle, I know you requested the same thing for my bling. I did some enhanced pattern notes to turn this bling into the hashtag, and we talked about that last week. I still have an email list of those that requested these enhanced pattern notes who bought it, and then I will give same thing for Blooming Wallflowers. So I'm kind of a little bit behind on getting some of my work done, and my graphic designer's a little bogged down, but she's getting me stuff as soon as she can, so it looks really pretty. So okay, back to this. So for the traditional cutting, let's talk about traditional cutting, and then we'll talk about die cutting. Again, you can do it either way. You can either cut traditional, which is just your standard rotary cutter, ruler, or mat, or you can do the die cutting. I like to recommend a ruler, But even before I get into that, I want to let you know you don't have to have any specialty equipment in the pattern itself for blooming wallflowers. It comes with full-size templates for all 3 sizes. For the 4-inch blocks, 6-inch blocks, and 9-inch blocks like this. So all you have to do, if you don't want to use a rotary cutter or you don't want to do die cutting, you've got 2 ideas. You can either make a template out of plastic, trace it, and then just put on your fabric and then like put your rotary ruler on top of that. You probably could even just photocopy this, lay it down on your fabric, and then just cut right next to it. You can do that. It's kind of a pain. I do recommend the ruler, but again, I don't want people to feel like they have to spend a lot of money. So right here, Blooming Wallflowers comes with all 3 sizes. Okay, now here, there's always kind of like, you know, pros and cons of every method. So if you don't want to buy anything, you don't have to other than the pattern. What I recommend for traditional cutting is the set of Tri-Rex tools. I think I have like 3 of these left as of today, Tuesday, November 30th. So if you're watching this later in the future, you can find this online. I know that the big box stores carry it. I know that most quilt shops, but anyway, this is just a set of Tri-Rex tools. I use this for so many blocks. This one will make blocks up to 6 inches finish, 6.5. All right, I'm getting a little shiny from my lights back there on the plastic. But anyway, this Tri-Rex tool will make any size up to 6. So if you want to do the 4-inch size, the 4-inch finish, or the 6-inch finish, you could even play around and figure it out yourself. And you could, I'm trying to put this around, you could do 5.5, 3.5, you could do all sorts of sizes up to 6.5. If you want to make the larger version of the quilt, you're going to need a larger size, in which case you'll need, this one is actually from Creative Grids. Let's see, Creative Grids, I don't know if that's backwards or not there. And this is called the triangle squared and the half rectangle ruler. Let's see, they have these funky names. Oh, perfect rectangle. This is the perfect rectangle, which is basically a half rectangle shape. And this is your triangle shape. This can make up to 9-inch blocks. I like the Tri-Rex better because it's cheaper. I think it's maybe 15 or 16 bucks for the set. It's under 20. These I think are more like $20 each. So it's like 40 bucks for both. It's kind of more expensive. But if you want to make the larger size, you absolutely can. And then of course the most expensive version is getting the AccuQuilt and the die cutters and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, Denise says that she's seen the Tri-Rex tools for many other patterns. I love the Tri-Rex. I really, really love it. So those are the tools that you need to cut it out. Either the Tri-Rex or this, or the AccuQuilt. So now let's talk about that for a moment. I'm trying to think what else I want to tell you. Oh, super, super important to understand. I'll show you this shape. This is not an equilateral triangle. Not. It is not. It's like 42.5 degrees or some funky thing. It is an isosceles triangle, which means these 2 sides are the same. This side is not the same. So if you tried to rotate it, it does not. It is a triangle in a square, which means you put this together with this shape over here on either side, and it makes a square. If you were to do an equilateral triangle, that does not make a square because that's 60-degree triangle. So let me state that, super important. This is not a 60-degree triangle. It is not an equilateral triangle. It is a specific shape that's like the Tri-Rex shape. So just keep that in mind. And that comes in really important when we move on to AccuQuilt. So, okay. All right, Michelle has to go. Check us out later. No problem. So now if you're going to do the die cutting instead of the rulers or templates, you need the triangle in a square die. Okay, let me show you the shape and then I'll talk about it. This one right here, I've written a little top at the top because look at this closely. It has the blunted ends on all 3 sides. But again, it is not an equilateral triangle. So I have one of the little shapes that I cut out here already. This is my little candy cane stripe fabric. Isn't that cute? That's going to go in my quilt. This right here is what the shape looks like when it's all cut out. If I were to rotate this, you would very quickly see that that does not line up. Okay. If I were to rotate again the 3rd way, you would see that that does not line up because it is not a 60-degree triangle. So you want to make sure you have it rotated the right way. Okay. And what I would recommend doing when you're cutting a bunch of these, I would go ahead and put a pin in the top so that you know that that's the top of your shape so that you can remember. So that's this top triangle. Now, the thing to think about when you're cutting out these shapes, whether you're doing AccuQuilt cutting or traditional cutting, is because it's a triangle, it's not a square shape, you're going to be rotating it up or down to cut it. On this shape, it doesn't really matter because the stripe goes one way or the other way, and it doesn't really matter. But if you're working with a directional print, you might get it upside down. So there's two things to think about. You either need twice as much fabric if you're working with a directional print, or you need to be okay if some of your stuff's upside down. So in the kits, I'm just going to give you enough fabric to cut it the correct way, like going up one way and then going down the other way, but just keep that in mind. And none of my fabrics are directional, so it's not gonna cause a problem. Oh good, Nancy says she got the Tri-Rex roll for another project. She loves it. That's really, really good to hear. So anyway, that's the one shape that you need. The other shape that you need makes the little half rectangles is this one. And the nice thing about it is it has two shapes, but these are, let's see, on the die cut is not a mirror image, so you're going to cut them out a pair at a time. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If you're to take this shape right here, this is that background that I'm going to be using. Let's line it up. And you put it here, that's half of your rectangle. If you rotate it the other way, that's your other half of your rectangle. That's the same shape. So you need a mirror image shape. You need a left and a right for both center triangle. I call these the side triangles. So what you need to do is when you're cutting this out, you need to fold your fabric in half so that either wrong sides together or right sides together, so that, I'll show you on this little piece of fabric. This is a strip that I have cut out to do it. So you take your strip and you're going to be folding it in half. I normally do it wrong sides together, and then you're going to be running it through the die cutter across the shape. I'm not going to show that now because my die cutter is kind of heavy, but I have some videos I'm going to start sharing. Anyway, so then you run it across the shape so that when you cut it, you get a mirror image basically. Okay, so really quickly, for those of you that are interested in die cutting, those two things that I just showed you, they come in the Go Cube Mix and Match 12-inch companion set. And it's a larger die. I think the die board itself is like 10 inches. So you need the larger cutter. You can't have the smaller cutter. I think it's just, let's see, I looked it up real quick. Let me tell you what it's called. Either the Go or the Go Big is what you need. If you're going to die cut the shape, you need the Go cutter or the Go Big. I have the Go Big electronic cutter, which I really enjoy using a lot of, but it does take up a lot of space. So anyway, now I want to talk into kind of some issues that I ran into when I was cutting. So first of all, I cut out a whole bunch of shapes. Here's like some of my little triangles that I was cutting out. Then I cut out a whole bunch of the half rectangles, and I started researching because there's this thing with AccuQuilt where they really like to stress the fact that they really want you to I can play around with my hair, get the little grace in there. When you're cutting out the Go or any of the AccuQuilt dies, they really like for you to cut on this, what is it, the straight of grain. Okay, so let's have a little bit of lesson in straight of grain versus cross grain. The straight of grain is going to be the least amount of stretch. So it'll be kind of hard to see here, but whenever you're cutting strips, normal strips, you're cutting them the cross grain. Okay, so like for your 42-inch wide fabric, the width of fabric, 42 inches long, and however wide it is, your selvage is going to be on the bottom. Okay, no problem. The selvage edge this way is the least amount of stretch. So if I were to, yank on this right here, it's not going to be very stretchy. If I yank on it this way, it's a little bit more stretchy. Now, normally we don't worry about that. And when we're cutting, like behind us for traditional cutting, we just cut out the shapes the most efficient way possible. However, with AccuQuilt, they like you to cut on the straight of grain because sometimes the shapes can stretch a little bit. Now, I tried both ways, and let me get a little bit into the weeds here. If you're going to cut on the straight of grain, then let's see, or the cross grain. If you're cutting on the cross grain, that's like normal fabric strips, and the selvage is going to be this way. If you are cutting on the straight of grain, then the selvage is going to be the other way. Let's see if I'm saying that right. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Anyway, yeah, so this would be a width of fabric strip. If you cut it the other way, then it would be a length of fabric strip. That's what I'm trying to say. In my pattern, my patterns are all written for width of fabric cutting, and so that's how I'm going to do most of it for AccuQuilt. This can be a little controversial. Most of the stuff is going to be cut the width of fabric. So let me show you why. If I was cutting like this, okay, Let me line this up. When you're cutting with AccuQuilt, you fan fold so that you can make your shapes. You can cut through a lot of shapes at once. So here's my strip, my width of fabric strip. I've got my selvage at the bottom. I'm going to take my cutter, and what they want you to do, I'll tell you what they want you to do, but I'm not doing it that way. I'm doing it different. They want you to line up the selvage edge with the, what's that, the sticker, and then so you're going to send it through the machine this way. So like the sticker is like facing you, they call it like facing your tummy or facing your face when you do it and you do the cutter, rather than this way. So you're not going to send it through the machine this way, you're going to send it through the machine that way. So let me show you what happens when you line it up the way that AccuQuilt recommends. Okay, so I'm going to put this down here. Okay, so they want you to line it up where the selvage is always facing towards you. And then you would do this thing called a fan fold. So you do the strip, and then you fold it, and you can cut up to 6 layers. So this is 2 layers deep, or two layers, you know, folded wrong sides together, 6 layers. And so I could send it through the machine that way. That would be fine. However, it wastes more fabric. Okay, it wastes more fabric. I can get 6 cuts on one strip of fabric, but for my math, I need to get 8 cuts. Okay, I need 8 cuts of fabric. So what I do is I turn it the other way, all right? And when I fan fold it, let me kind of rearrange, because you can see here, I feel like I'm kind of all thumbs here, but you can see here that this is shorter and this is longer. So for example, like the strips I'm going to cut them this wide so that it fits the whole amount of fabric. AccuQuilt would say cut them this wide and then flip your strip, but it doesn't work as well that way. I'm going to cut the strips this wide, which for a 6-inch finished, you need to cut it, the block would be 6.5. You always cut them a 1/2 inch larger. So that's the one main difference between AccuQuilt. You cut it larger and then you trim it down, or it trims it down for you, versus traditional. So like we're going to be cutting 6.5-inch strips for that quilt, cut the traditional way. For the die cutting, we're going to be cutting 7-inch strips. And again, that information is in the enhanced pattern notes. So again, let me show you if I cut it more efficiently. Let me line this up and then I'll show you what this looks like. Check out this now. When I cut this, when I fold this up 3 layers deep, so there's 1 layer, or that's 2 layers, 4 layers, let's see, 2 layers, 4 layers, 6 layers. There's 6 layers in there. And I run it through the cutter, I'm going to have, actually I'll do it the other way, 1 second. This is why I do videos, because then I can edit them. Whenever I layer it, I'm going to start by putting the selvage this way. So this time it's perpendicular to me, it's not facing me. Let's see if I can do it better this way. So I'm going to layer it here. Okay, there we go. Now you can see it. It's all about showing you, okay, 1, 2, 3. Now when I send it through the machine this way, I have this whole extra chunk, and that's going to be enough to get me the extra layers that I need, because I need to cut out 8 shapes. If I do it this way, I'll have enough. So I'm folding it that way rather than folding it this way. Okay. Now I did do some research. I spent a lot of time. AccuQuilt recommends cutting on the straight of grain where possible, where practical. In this instance, it's not practical to do that. It's better to cut it on the width of fabric. Same thing happens when I'm cutting, let's say I'm cutting this other shape for the triangles. If you were to cut the length of grain instead of the width of grain, you would basically be cutting, it would take a whole 7-inch square to cut out this shape, and you would lose a lot in the process. So if, again, I fan fold it like this, I'll show you. You're actually going to do this a little bit different. When you're cutting the triangles, you're not going to layer them together, wrong sides together. What you're going to do is you're going to cut through, and you're just going to cut 1 shape at a time. Then you're going to flip the strip upside down so that you can cut the next triangle shape. And it's still efficient, because rather than folding a strip and cutting it like 2, 4, 6 layers at a time, you're going to take a bunch of individual strips and cut a bunch at the same time. So basically what happens is you're going to cut 1 triangle this way, and then the next triangle is going to be upside down. It's kind of hard to do a 3D thing and hold it up when there's gravity in the way, but you guys kind of get the gist of what I'm doing. So basically, let me show you what this looks like. Okay. So by the time you send them through, your shapes are going to be up and down. And it's basically mimicking what you do with the Tri-Rex, but it's cutting it more accurately and more efficiently. Like I said, I'm going to have some videos included with the quilt along to kind of show you guys this, but I just wanted to point those things out. Now, where I am going to cut width of fabric, or excuse me, straight of grain, get all these terminology confused, where I am going to cut the straight of grain is going to be for the background. Now, I just ordered this die. This is a 6-inch setting triangle die, and so I'm waiting, and I haven't been able to test this out yet, but I'm pretty confident with the math. This is for all of the setting triangles around the blocks, because the blocks are basically put on point. And so this is a 6-inch, it's 6-inch setting triangles. It's got the triangles right there for the setting triangles, and it's got the corner. Now, when I saw this, at first I was a little bit frustrated. Oh, good. Roxana said, oh, I get it now. That's great. Oh, if using the AccuQuilt, how much extra yardage is needed? Brenda, I'll come right back to that. So right here, this is for the setting triangles. Now, when I saw this kind of concerned me at first, because what I had always done when I was cutting the setting triangles and the corner triangles is I would take an oversized square and I would cut it in half on the diagonal twice to get 4 of these. And then I would cut a square out once and cut it on the diagonal once, and I would get 2 of these. And I was like, why did they not do the die this way? But then as I started testing and thinking about it, what I realized is when you are cutting a square on the diagonal 2 times, 2 sides of that square are going to be on the straight of grain, parallel to the selvage. The other 2 sides are going to be on the cross grain. So throughout your quilt, half of the squares around the edges are going to be stronger than the other half. And I didn't realize that until I realized, wait a second, whenever you cut these, I know this isn't a really pretty clear picture. The way you cut these, if you cut these strips parallel to the selvage, these outside edges here, here, and on the other side, those are going to be parallel to the straight of grain, and that's going to work. And then this one, you only get 1 triangle here, but in the pattern, there's leftovers from other parts, and you only need 4 of them on the whole quilt. So it's not that big of a deal to have a little bit of waste here. That didn't bother me. You're going to need like 28 of these triangles, basically. And so you can, the way you cut it, you can basically get 7 triangles per strip. And so you need 4 strips worth. Okay, one other thing, if I haven't totally confused you yet, this die is like 6 inches wide, and this piece right here is about 20 inches long. So I'm going to totally confuse you. You're not going to be cutting 6-inch wide strips. If you were to cut 6-inch wide strips, then those outside edges would be on that cross grain, which would be a little stretchier. Instead, you're going to cut out parallel to the selvage, and it's going to be like 1 1/4 yards of fabric, which is about 45 inches. You're going to cut a strip that's about 40 to 45 inches by 6 inches wide. Okay, so again, this is in the enhanced pattern notes. Don't get too hung up on it. But basically, you're going to be cutting a strip, and I cut one out here. Let me show you. So this is a strip that's 6 inches by 40, but it's not cross cut. It's length cut, length of grain. So let me see if you can see this really closely. Can you see, right, let's see, right up here. Kind of see myself in there. Okay, there is the selvage edge right there. You can see the little marks on the selvage edge. I didn't worry about getting some of the selvage edge in the strip because that's going to be wider than you need to. This is for the triangles that go around the outside edges. So this is a length of grain fabric strip, not a width of grain fabric strip. And fortunately, because I figured out all the math, basically in the kit, what you're going to do is you're going to cut out all the backgrounds, then you're going to cut these out for the side triangles, and then you're going to have some leftover chunks that you can cut your binding also from length of grain. Okay. The reason I'm telling you all this now is you can decide how you want to cut it, either die cutting or traditional cutting. As I make videos and show you how to make this quilt, I'm going to show cutting of both. I'm going to pretty much try to show as much as possible so you can follow making the quilt from start to finish, no matter how you're going to cut it. I'm going to show you one way to cut it, and I'm going to show you another way. I just want to go into that detail. Now, Brenda says, if using the AccuQuilt, how much extra yardage is needed? For the blocks, no extra yardage, because I'm cutting for the shapes, for the block shapes, because I'm cutting width of fabric strips, it's calculated the same as traditional cutting. If I was cutting length of grain, you would need more fabric, and I don't know how much more because I haven't figured out. Maybe 1.5, almost 2 times as much sometimes, because it's not efficient. With the shapes, I'll say that again, with the shapes, I'm cutting regular with the fabric strips that you're used to. It's the normal way we're cutting, so you don't need any more fabric for the triangles. Sorry, for these guys. Okay, for these guys right here. You need a tiny bit more background fabric, which in this one is blue and the one I'm doing is black, because you're going to be cutting 7-inch strips instead of 6.5-inch strip. With the blocks, it's based on fat quarters and fat eighths, and you already have the extra built in, so you don't need any more fabric. With the background, it's just a quarter yard more. So if you have I'll tell you this, if you have this pattern and it has the instructions and the yardage requirements right there, it says 4 yards of background. You need 4 1/4. You really need like 4 1/8, but I round up. So that's the only difference. You just need a tiny bit more background. But even if you got 4 yards and you didn't have any extra, then you could just use a different fabric for the binding, because that 4 yards or 4 1/4 includes the binding. Okay, have I completely confused you guys yet? I know live is a totally different thing. Oh, the other 2 dies. So let me summarize. Okay, so for the shapes, for this for those flower blocks, it's the 12-inch companion set of the angles to get both the triangle die cutting 6-inch finished and the side triangles 6-inch finished. That's what you need for that. For the borders, the setting triangles all the way around, it's the companion angle for 6-inch blocks. And then the only one I don't show here, there are a few squares. You can't see it, but it's in the pattern itself. I've already dropped everything because I'm live and making a big mess that you can't see behind me. But the only other thing you need, there are some squares that kind of offset the block, like right there. See how it kind of floats? There's some squares on there in addition to the triangles, and you just need the 6.5-inch square, and that also comes in the 12-inch regular cube. Okay. I think that's pretty much it for the AccuQuilt. Oh, you said the first cuts were in the 12-inch cube, but what are the individual dies? Oh, okay. I have those written down on my notes, so let me tell you. I will say those out loud. So the individual dies, here's my little note right here. I will show you. This is going to be included in your enhanced pattern notes. I'll kind of show you. See my little list right there? I'll put it there in case anybody wants to look at that, but then I will go over what it is. The triangle in a square finished is the 55757. Then it's the triangles in a square side 6-inch finish, 55817. This is pretty good, me reading backwards. Then the 6.5-inch square is the 55000. Is that right? 55000. Okay. Then the go setting triangles is the 55550. And then for if you want to do binding, I'm going to do 2-inch strips for binding. You can get the 55025 strip cutter. Okay, I'll hold this up on the screen in case anybody wants to screenshot it or come back to it. Those are all the dies that I'm using to cut it out with die cutting. Cool? Is that helpful for you guys? Okay, so the dies would be yes, it's 6-inch finished blocks. 6-inch finished blocks. It's a little confusing because they come in the 12-inch cube. Then you need the 6-inch finished squares. Then you need the 6-inch finished companion, what's it called? Setting triangles that are not in the 12-inch. So that gets a little confusing, but in the enhanced pattern notes, in the notes, all of this stuff, I will write down the numbers for you. Just for, disclaimer, I am an AccuQuilt ambassador now. I am a, an affiliate. So I'll put affiliate links. If you buy them there, I get a little, kickback, whatever, but definitely buy them when they're on sale. Like hold on to the link and then buy them when they're on sale. Don't pay full price if you can help it. So good. I'm glad this has been helpful for you guys. Like I said, hopefully it hasn't confused you guys too much. Are there any other questions on anything that I didn't cover? If you want to just follow along, you don't have to make the quilt. You can just, follow along in your head and just pretend to make it in your head. To summarize, we're going to be making the quilt. It's going to start January 3rd. I will have links to all the dies. I'm going to put them in the notes of this video. So whether you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, all of the notes and links will be in here. Then later, I'm going to have all that information also posted on my blog at ChristaQuilts.com. Today's Tuesday, November 30th. The blog post is going to go up this Friday. So if you're watching this after Tuesday, November 30th, you'll have all the links. You can go to the blog post. You can get the kit while supplies last. You can get the Tri-Rex. You can get the AccuQuilt. I just want to give you guys as many options as possible to make this quilt. I'm going to have blog posts. I'm going to have pictures. I'm going to have videos. I'm getting all that done now so it's ready to go in January. So we can have something fun to start on. Oh, could you use a 10-inch cube set and angles? Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, Jane. You can use a different size. It's just going to be different math. This right here is based on a 6-inch finished block. If you wanted to do it as a 5-inch finished blocks, it would absolutely work. You would need all the shapes that are for 5-inch finished, 5-inch finished triangle and square, 5-inch finished squares, 5-inch finished setting triangles. In the pattern itself, I give it to you in 4 sizes, 4 inches and 6 inches and 9 inches. I know there are 4-inch dies to make all that. And I think there's 12-inch dies, don't quote me on that, or 9-inch dies, don't quote me on that. But for sure, if you want to make the 4-inch dies, you could, everything I said, but it would just be a smaller size. So yes, I like my patterns to be versatile. Sometimes people say, well, how much fabric do I need for a different size? My answer for that is I haven't calculated it for the other sizes other than what's in the pattern. But you guys are smart. You guys can figure it out. You can definitely do different sizes. Okay, we're right at 42 minutes, so that's not too bad. I'm only about 10 minutes over. I just want to thank you guys for being here. Next week, real quick. So next Tuesday, I'm going to do these lives every Tuesday. We're going to be talking pattern play. That's going to be my theme. And basically what I want to talk to you guys is how, as a designer, sometimes when I come up with pattern ideas, they're based, excuse me, they're based on a theme or a block, and a lot of times they will go off in different directions. So I've kind of showed this before. These two patterns, bling and interlinked, these are called sister patterns because they're based, even though this one's very traditional and this one's very modern, they're both based on the same idea. And when you see the differences, you'll be like, duh, it's kind of similar. But they're different enough that they're two independent patterns, but they're based on the same idea. So that'll be next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel, and I hope you guys join me then. If you guys watch the recorded version of this, you can still leave your comments either on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching. I always go back in and I monitor comments and I answer questions, a month from now, 6 months from now. Leave your questions and I'm happy to help you guys. So good. Thank you guys for coming. I will see you next week. Have a great week.